And at the beginning, the reality is with a lot of startups, the chances that, there's a good chance that you won't be in business in, let's say, a year's time, right? So it's smart to spend your initial budget on, marketing and sales and all those things, because, you could have the greatest businesses in the world, or the greatest shareholders agreement in the world, but if you're not generating sales, no one cares, right? When you actually ask customers, and this is not just in our business, I think it's across so many different types of businesses. When you ask customers about what matters to them most, it's assumed that the quality of the legal work is going to be good. Like you're going to a lawyer, you're assuming that's going to be good, but you don't actually know whether what you're getting from that lawyer is good from a technical legal perspective. What you do know is if they talk to you in an empathetic way, dealt with you, in a way which you found an enjoyable way to kind of work. I think the key is to listen to the customers. I think a lot of people trying to innovate in the legal space, for sure. It's all about what's good for the lawyers, it's important, don't get me wrong, but very few people are thinking about what do customers actually want. Great thing is you can find out very, very easily by, putting, $5K into some AdWords, and you'll get to talk to some people and find out, okay, well, what are people actually interested in? What do people actually want?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Make It Happen show. I'm Tim Morris, the CEO at The Entourage, and today I'm joined by Lachlan McKnight, the co-founder and CEO of LegalVision. LegalVision is taking SaaS principles and applying them to the legal industry. It's making them the fastest growing legal firm here in Australia. So we talk with Lachlan about his journey to build this great business, of course, how it's had to innovate and iterate along the way. We touch on how they're navigating around the big players in the industry and really taking the middle market a little bit by surprise, actually. And of course, we touch on the key legal issues that all business owners need to know. And trust me, it's better to know about legal issues before they happen than afterwards. So there's a lot of great stuff in here for every business owner. Let's get into it. So today I'm joined by Lachlan McKnight. Lachlan, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing very well. What's been the highlight of your week so far?
Managing to get most of the team in today, actually. So I think it's probably the first day in about 6 months that we had 60% of the team in the office. So, probably exciting time for us.
Yeah. Well, it is so good to get the team back together, particularly in a growth business like yours. I mean, you guys have been going great guns. I think just in less than 10 years, you've become the fastest growing law firm in the whole region. How have you made that happen?
Yeah, look, so it has been, almost 10 years now. And look, our model from the start's been a kind of digital-driven model. So, unlike most law firms, we kind of started from, I guess, with a digital-first approach, which has meant, a lot of SEM focus from a marketing perspective, a huge SEO focus, and we've got about something like 7,000 articles on our website. So, number one visited legal website in Australia, and that's kind of been the main lead driver for our business.
Yeah.
And then I guess the second kind of big difference to a traditional firm from at least an acquisition perspective is we run our kind of sales strategy with an actual sales team as opposed to individual partners doing their own sales. So we've basically copied a number of elements that you get in a kind of SaaS business and tried to, I guess, sort of turn that into a model that works for a legal services business.
That's really interesting. And so you went from like a corporate lawyer, you had a career in that area, and then launched LegalVision. And so I could see how you could bring the legal background, but why or how did you start bringing those SaaS model marketing and sales strategies into the field?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to be honest, a fair bit of self-learning. I mean, the difference with what we've done over the years to, but I guess a business that's kind of starting a SaaS business back 20 years ago is we didn't need to reinvent the wheel, right? A lot of this information as to, how to run a digital marketing campaign, how to run an inbound sales team, the kind of CAC to lifetime ratio numbers, all that sort of thing. That information is all over the internet, has been for, well, certainly since I started this business with my co-founder. And so, really it's taking the time to do a fair bit of reading and then frankly just having a go and seeing what works. And I think that's that's what's enabled us to kind of get us to where we are now from that perspective. Yeah.
So I'd love to actually hear the genesis of LegalVision a bit. So was there like a moment when you were sitting in the more kind of like traditional corporate law firm and you're like, you know what, I reckon there's this opportunity here, or did it happen more organically? What was the beginning?
Yeah, sort of the opposite in some ways. I'd been a corporate lawyer, I'd done an MBA. I kind of knew I wanted to get out of being a corporate lawyer, and then worked for a bit of time in an investment bank. But at that time, I was basically looking for an idea, wanted to start a business, and basically kind of did a massive list of all the sorts of businesses I thought I might try. One of which was tech enabled legal services, but I wasn't necessarily driven to frankly run. The fact that I'm running a law firm, a lot of my friends think is ridiculous, to be honest. So, um, yeah, I really just want to start a business, and I guess to an extent, had some of this kind of skill sets that were necessary to start this business. And probably if it hadn't have succeeded in the first kind of year or two, probably would have started another business doing something
Yeah.
else. So, yeah.
There are so many variables though when you launch a new business, like so many variables, that I do think it is smart to like at least have one of those pillars a little bit sorted out, right? If you're like, I kind of know how the industry works, I kind of know what customers are missing, I've got to go learn all this other stuff, so I might as well, start in a space that I'm familiar with.
Oh, for sure. I think it also helps you when you're looking to raise capital. I mean, you've got some kind of credibility in the space, and potential investors feel a little, more secure. Like, anyone investing in a startup, knows that the chances are that they're going to lose their investment, but you want to be betting on founders, I guess, that have, some sort of an idea about what they're talking about. So yeah, I think that does help.
You're not building rocket ship companies with founders with no background in that area, although we are seeing some of those.
No, well, exactly. And look, having said that, you can be successful doing that as well, right? I mean, if you look at like an Airbnb or whatever, those guys were not experts in, the hotel business, were they? So,
No way. There's a great story about how they were almost out of money. Like they were like really, really almost out of money. I think they were probably couch surfing themselves, and then it was right around the Obama and McCain election, and so they came up. Did you ever see this? They came up with cereal.
yeah, the cereal, yeah.
Obama branded cereal, McCain branded cereal, and that's how they raised their money.
Yeah,
It's pretty smart.
yeah, for sure. No. There you go.
So getting back onto your journey, I mean, actually, I think you said there was tech-enabled legal services.
Yeah, well, that's what we are now. I mean, where we started off was actually we were more focused on providing, I guess, legal documents online. We weren't a law firm to start with, and so we sort of started the business with this idea that we'd replicate some overseas models that have worked well, which were, you fill in a form and it creates a legal document for you, and that was the initial idea. And what we sort of found was customers, or leads, were interested in that, but actually not interested enough to build a super, big business. And what people were really looking for was additional help, additional support. And we found that actually there was a real desire for customers to, ultimately talk to a lawyer and have that relationship with a lawyer. And so from there, we kind of evolved the model, and to the stage where what it is now is tech-enabled legal services. And this has been a broader, industry-wide, not just legal industry-wide kind of movement from pure software kind of solutions to tech-enabled service solutions where, you have an accountant or a lawyer or whatever it might be delivering the service, but behind that service provider sits a tech stack that enables them to do the work, A, more efficiently, so your margins are better, but B, in a way which generates a super consistent service. And that's something that you'll find in the legal industry. You might get a great lawyer, you might get a bad lawyer, but in a law firm, often, there's no consistency as to the way in which the service is provided. And that's what a kind of tech stack sitting back there allows you to do. It allows you to, we probably do, 3,000-4,000, pieces of work, or what we call work units in a month now. And we have every lawyer doing them as much as possible in exactly the same way from a process perspective. And that's kind of, it means when you kind of survey your customers, net promoter score, and so on and so forth, you can you can actually kind of see, look, actually what they like is the way in which the service is delivered, and they're less focused on the individual kind of performance of the individual lawyer.
It's one of the areas where consistency is so important, particularly when you're getting into like big deals or real crunch time. Like the difference between having a really, really hot shot lawyer and someone who's not so much could be huge. And so having a little bit more trust that, it's a consistent level of service every time, I could see being very valuable.
Yeah, that's true. Although the interesting thing is, when you actually ask customers, and this is not just in our business, I think it's across so many different types of businesses. When you ask customers about what matters to them most, it's assumed that the quality of the legal work is going to be good. Like you're going to a lawyer, you're assuming that's going to be good, but you don't actually know whether what you're getting from that lawyer is good from a technical legal perspective. What you do know is if they talk to you in an empathetic way, dealt with you, in a way which you found an enjoyable way to kind of work. The customer can certainly tell if you promised something and didn't get it back to them on time. So, were you consistent in your promises in terms of turnaround times and so on and so forth? Were you consistent in terms of what you sold and then what you delivered? And those are things that, customers are judging you as a lawyer, not against other law firms, but against, Apple, against, Qantas, against those kind of service providers and product providers. And so that's where I think that the kind of tech stack at the back that sits behind our business enables us to deliver that consistency. Yeah.
Yeah. The expectation of the level of service is just across every industry has increased so much over the last decade, I suppose. I'm really interested in how you've evolved from that kind of like individual documents into full-fledged services and the journey there, because that is how every business or mature business goes, right? You start with a set of product offerings, and then you realize you might have slightly missed the mark or didn't quite work for you as a business, so you want to introduce something else. Can you identify or remember any key milestones in the innovation journey of LegalVision?
Yeah, I mean, it's been so I co-founded LegalVision with Evan, who's a developer. So, our model's always been we build our own, as much as possible, build our own tech, and that's built in a way which is driven by what are customers asking for on the one hand, and what do we need from a business perspective to enable us to work more efficiently on the other. And so, as is the nature of these things, when you start off, you've got 400% growth in your first few months, and you're growing very quickly, but the scale is still very small, and so you can manage the business. And when we started off, in terms of CRM, we had a Google spreadsheet, which is how we kind of tracked everything, right?
That's where everyone starts, or they start on an Excel sheet, which actually gets no version control.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So the evolution of kind of our product and the tech that sits behind it has been exactly that, an evolution. And there've been I wouldn't say there've been massive moments, massive big changes, but certainly the two ones that I can think back to was the time we went from basically doing the documents to going, okay, we want to have lawyers doing the work. And the initial model there was we had a marketplace of lawyers doing the work. And then about another year in, we went, the consistency of the lawyers in the marketplace isn't the quality that we want. So we're going to actually create our own incorporated legal practice law firm and do the work ourselves. And a lot of people at the time went, well, that's ridiculous, because your payroll costs are going to go up a lot. You've got to pay the lawyers and so on and so forth. But the thing that I think we realized was we knew there was enough demand that we would be able to continually keep growing the business. And in that environment, there's going to be little downtime for the lawyers. So that, having, I guess, in some ways the belief in your model to go, what, even though people are saying this isn't the direction everyone's going, everyone at the time was doing a marketplace. Marketplaces were cool, were sexy, and so on and so forth. That, this tech-enabled services model was actually one that would work. And then the latest evolution for us, and this happened, probably about a year and a half ago now, was we decided, look, we've got a huge customer base, we get lots and lots of leads every day, but what we really want to build is a super consistent revenue stream. And if we do that, we can deliver a service to customers in an even better way than we do now. And so we've evolved the business over the last year and a half to be a membership based business, so a subscription business. And so more and more of our revenue comes from kind of membership or subscription revenue. That's been a big evolution. It really changed the way you think about your business. It changed the way you interact with your clients. And that's been a big change for us as well.
Yeah, so you've really actually gone through a number of different business models there as you've evolved. You've gone from let's I don't know, democratize access to documentation at scale to now service, and then the subscription bit's actually really interesting because we're largely a subscription-based education business. We do training programs where people are in them for a year or more. It's not about so much day-to-day ups and downs of the business. It's more around like, okay, stuff that's going on now, what's going to be the ramification of that in 6 months as things stack up?
Well, this is exactly it. So when you think about when you look for a lawyer, no one ever goes, oh, what I'm gonna go and find a lawyer in case I need something down the track. No. People, when they look for a lawyer, have an immediate legal issue. And what happens is the relationship between a small, medium business and a lawyer is often very transactional. I need a distribution agreement drafted. I look for a lawyer, and the lawyer says, I'll do it for you on a fixed fee or on hourly rates, and then it's done, and then that's it, Whereas if you want to really support a business through their growth and all the issues that come with that, and when you think about it, you incorporate, you need a shareholders agreement, you might need an initial client agreement, a trademark, and then what happens is if the business is successful, then there's going to be a lot of things that kind of come out of it. Firstly, you might have legal disputes that you get into because you're successful. Your trademark might be objected to, and so on and so forth. And what happens is if you don't have, well, this is what we found, this kind of membership structure means we can be thinking about getting ahead of the curve on these things. So we have all-inclusive membership. So that means, we'll do all of your drafting, all of your trademarks, everything basically. And it means we can do them, at the beginning, when for your average business, it might be difficult to go, okay, I'm going to spend, $6,000-$7,000 on all this legal work right at the beginning. And so they don't do it. Whereas you sign up to a membership and you're paying, $99 a week, and it's much more cost effective. But because we know we've got that relationship built in, you've bought a 3-year or 1 year or 5-year membership, then we can justify, okay, we'll do all this work up front. And it makes for a much, better way of working with the clients, I think.
Well, the number of small businesses I see who might be like 4 or 5 years in, things are starting to go, and they're really starting to have to look at their shareholders agreement or look at how they're set up, and it's an absolute mess. Or oftentimes they don't even know where it is, right? Like if you've got a shareholders agreement, like, oh, I think I've got one somewhere, and you're like, can you do that under your shareholders agreement? They're like, I've got no idea. And then it costs them so much time and effort to get it all fixed up then. But I could see the juxtaposition for them under the old model, right? They don't want to spend that money at the beginning, but they need it then.
For sure. I mean, look, and at the beginning, the reality is with a lot of startups, the chances that, there's a good chance that you won't be in business in, let's say, a year's time, right? So it's smart to spend your initial budget on, marketing and sales and all those things, because, you could have the greatest businesses in the world, or the greatest shareholders agreement in the world, but if you're not generating sales, no one cares, right? So it's about picking the time, I think. You've had some initial success. You're like, you know what? I really see this business is going to work out. That's when it makes sense to potentially start thinking about, okay, what are you going to do to make sure that you've got those solid legal foundations in place?
Hi everyone, I just wanted to jump in here to let you know if you're enjoying this episode, it doesn't need to stop here. We've taken this episode plus all the other episodes and also video footage from the interviews and made it available for free. There's also a bunch of fantastic guides, tools and resources you can use to grow your business. To grab those tools, just go to www.the-entourage.com/podcast. Right, let's get back into the show.
What are the most common legal issues or challenges you see SMEs facing kind of as they go through the key stages of growth?
Yeah. I mean, look, so at the start, it's all about that kind of setup. We act for a lot of startups who are raising capital or, venture capital funds who are investing in startups. And that's something that is very, um, very common in that, more of that tech startup space. And so there's a lot of startups that'll be raising money really from the get-go if they've got, a good model, founders that are credible and so on and so forth. And so getting that kind of initial framework in place is important. We see that with even more the small, medium business type businesses. It's kind of making sure that you've got the right kind of corporate structure set up. Do you have, are you running it through a company? Do you have a discretionary trust to own your shares in the company? All those sort of things that, will minimize your risk and also, help you from a tax perspective down the track.
Yep. Actually, can we just jump onto that just in a little bit more detail? So, I know a lot of entrepreneurs that as soon as you start talking about corporate structure, they're like, "Let's talk about something else." But can we just dive into that a little bit more?
Well, the basic corporate structure, let's say you're a plumber, is and a lot of plumbers out there just doing business on their own, and they're a sole trader, And what does that mean? It means, let's say you're successful in a year of business, you make $500,000, you generate $500,000 of revenue with not very many costs. You have to pay income tax on that $500,000. That's terrible from a tax perspective. It also means if you've screwed up and done the plumbing badly and you get sued, you're going to be personally liable for anything that happens and any payments that need to be made and so on and so forth. So that's why what you effectively do, and everyone should have a company that they run their business through, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the most common business structure, and it means from a tax perspective, it's better to run, but it also means it's limited liability. If something goes badly wrong, you're personally not liable for the issues that have happened in the company. The next step is then, how do you own your shares in the company? Now, the simplest way is to personally own your shares in the company, right? Let's say there's 100 shares in the company, you own them, and that's fine, and it's fine for a lot of people. But if you want to go the next step, what a lot of people do is own their shares in their company through a trust. And what that means is, if the business is super successful, they can stream revenue out of the trust. Maybe they might have a partner who's not working. They can basically call it what you want, but they can pay that partner, $100K a year for not doing any work, and it means it reduces the overall amount of tax they're going to be paying. Mm-hmm. But look, these are things that ultimately are important, but not as important as running a business successfully. I think that's important for people to realize. There's definitely people who over-engineer their kind of business structure. Okay, we're going to have a holding company in the British Virgin Islands and another company holding the IP in Hong Kong and whatever, right? And for most people, that's not necessary. So you keep it relatively simple. But the one thing worth mentioning is it's hard to switch the structure around down the track, because there's often tax issues with doing that. So getting it right up front is kind of worth the investment, I'd say.
Well, we've certainly gone through the process of updating our shareholders agreement over the years, putting in a holding company, and like the amount of extra advice you need to get once you get bigger, just to make sure none of those changes have all these ramifications for shareholders or whatever. It racks up pretty quickly.
and that's obviously the issue. So then, in terms of the other sorts of things that are worth thinking about for someone who's successful, small and medium businesses, your intellectual property and trademark is kind of a big one there. Making sure you get your trademark registered and you're kind of protecting it, like you're keeping an eye on other people, infringing on the trademark. If nothing else, I think from a marketing perspective, it looks good to have your logo with the kind of registered trademark. It makes you look like you're a more legitimate business, right?
Yeah, it's what all businesses are trying to do, present that next level of legitimacy up.
And it's an easy way to do it, and it's not that expensive, so it's worth doing.
Yeah.
Then the other thing that comes up a lot is whatever business you're running, you're contracting with customers and suppliers, and it's making sure that those customer contracts and supply contracts protect you as much as they possibly can. So we
Yeah.
do a lot of that for small medium businesses,
Yeah.
and I could go on. So there's so much that needs to be done. So it's really for a small medium business, it's about going, all right, what are the things that are absolutely critical for the space that I'm in, and that's what I should invest in.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, you obviously buy a membership at LegalVision, and we can do it all for you. You don't have to
that
worry
way.
too much about the costs and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's what's worked for, isn't that? From a business model perspective, in that sense, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So as you sort of had tried a couple of different ways of disrupting the industry and landing on the tech-enabled services, have you experienced any resistance from the traditional players in the industry, and what does that look like?
Yeah, look, not really, I would say. And the reason is, the legal services industry in Australia is a $25 billion a year industry. We've got, 130 team members now, growing quickly, but we're tiny compared to the really big law firms. Those big law firms are not interested in small, medium business clients. What they're interested in is, the big banks, the BHPs of the world, so on and so forth. And so, no, I'd say the reality is the competition that we face is maybe twofold. One is on digital, online. There's a lot of law firms, particularly in the last 12 months, because they're struggling to get clients, that are kind of trying to compete online to acquire clients, and they're kind of a mixture of some newer firms, some kind of regional firms, some kind of not great firms that just are having a go. What you often see is people will spend a good amount of money on AdWords for maybe 6 months, and it doesn't really work for them because as we know, it's not the easiest thing to manage, and then they kind of give up. There's always some other chump who'll jump in and have a go as well. So digital, that's where we see some competition. And then I'd say sort of in that kind of mid-tier space. So back in the day, a small, medium business, an Entourage member, whatever, might be working with a kind of a mid-size, mid-tier law firm, often your type of members are looking for something different now. And so there are a few players in the market who are, effectively, I guess, taking business off those kind of mid-size sort of firms. But the reality is it's hard for those firms to compete because, they're run by people who, kind of don't really get the whole digital thing, are kind of, very slow and a bit fuddy-duddy in their approach. And so, I think there's a lot of growth opportunity in the space, but those big incumbents are going to be fine as well because the big end of town is kind of happy doing things that way,
Yeah, interesting. So something else that you touched on really early on, talking about sort of your success in terms of growth, marketing led was one of them, but also bringing in or introducing a sales team where traditionally it was partners doing the sales. Can you talk a little bit more about how you've done that and how you structure that?
Yeah, so obviously with the kind of digital funnel, you get kind of hundreds of leads a day coming through the website, either web form, chat, or calls, right? And the reality is a lot of those leads are not going to end up as customers because they're you get a wide variety of colourful cast of characters coming through often. So you need to start thinking, okay, what's a cost-effective way of us, talking to these people, trying to help them, but also, kind of moving them on if we're not going to be able to help them. Mm-hmm. And if you had a traditional law firm model, partners talking to these potential leads, it's not cost-effective at all. So what we came up with, what we built over time, was a team. Our growth team, our client care team, is made up of law grads, and their first role in the business is to start talking to customers, understanding them, and working out who we can help, and closing sales in the situations where we can help. So it's kind of a reversal. What we've built is a very structured, and Jack Hugh runs our sales team's built this over the years, a very structured training program to get people from, not knowing much about kind of sales to, being an effective salesperson pretty quickly. And they spend about a year in that team before often moving into our legal team at the end of that. So it's been, again, with that, it's like building it over time, because when you start off, you've got a smaller amount of leads, and it grows and it grows and it grows. And so you kind of scale out the team, in an evolutionary manner, rather than going, okay, one day we've just changed the way we're doing things. That's not how we've done it. We've certainly done it from an evolution basis. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually very similar to our journey with building our sales function here at the Entourage. I mean, we're about to turn 11 actually. And so for the early years, it was very, very key man dependent, our sales function. Only a couple of people could really do it. And then we started building a team, and then we built a sales development team to get that top of funnel, all those leads and feed them through to the actual account team here. And it's a game of inches, really. You slowly remove that key man dependence, and then you slowly build a bit of an engine. And then it's kind of like one day you're like, oh, that's working a bit better than it was this time last year.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then it's really just kind of tweaking things. So you go back to your marketing. Okay, well, how are we going with our lead volumes? It gets more and more competitive every year. And so then you kind of need to get better from a sales perspective, at converting. But I think the key thing with all of this, and I'm sure it's the same at the Entourage, is ultimately the sales side of things is super important, but the product needs to be, a really great product. And if you have a great product, then, it's a lot easier to sell than selling something that's shit,
100%. And also then you have great retention, and you're talking, we both talk kind of like long-term relationship with customers. It certainly relieves some of the pressure on your sales function if you're keeping customers for a long time when they're in.
For sure. And that's, again, for us, why the membership model, works well, because then what are you focused on? You're focusing on minimizing churn rather than necessarily needing to constantly increase the number of sales. Yeah.
Very interesting. I would have never, before this conversation, I wouldn't have really thought about applying, these are digital marketing and sales practices that, as you said, any SaaS business has, any high growth business has, and you've applied them to an industry where traditionally they haven't been applied. So no wonder you're having such good success. All right. I've got a couple more questions here that neither of us have seen. Anna over here types these up. We got 5 to get through. We make them happen in a minute-ish. I now say a minute per response. It used to be a minute for all 5. We never, ever, ever did that. So rapid fire to an extent. Ready to go?
Yeah, go.
Great. Number 1, what's the most important legal question all business owners should know the answer to?
I'd say, who owns your business?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, if you don't know that and in detail, go find out.
There's a lot of people who don't too.
Yeah. No, I've seen it. I agree. Number 2, what is your favorite city to live in and why?
Look, I've lived in lots of different places. So I'd say the answer depends on how old you are. So in my 20s, I would have said Paris. My sort of late 20s, Amsterdam. But now with 3 kids, I reckon Sydney's pretty good.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. I'm in Sydney with a couple of kids, and it is a very family-friendly city. You get through winter and you're like, that was it? No, we survived. Oh, this is a great question. Is being a lawyer similar or very different to how lawyers are represented in the movies?
I think it's pretty different. Pretty different, to be honest. Look, it depends on the sort of lawyer you are, but if you're a corporate lawyer, transactional corporate lawyer, it's there's a lot of sitting in conference rooms in an old suit, sort of desperately trying to read through documents that you've been awake for 23 hours working on. So that's in a traditional law firm. So there's already not
as much glitz, glam, and fast talking.
Yeah, there's not shenanigans going on in the in the photocopy room, like suits or whatnot. I think not at all.
We've dashed that dream for so many people. All right, question number 4. What is, for LegalVision, your big, hairy, audacious goal for the next 5 years?
Yeah, look, I wouldn't say it's big, hairy, and audacious, but our goal now is to grow by 20 to 25% year on year, top
Mhm.
line revenue wise. That's as you know, the bigger you get, the harder it is to grow. At a super high percentage growth rate, but that's what we're aiming for. We think we can do it, and if we do that, we'll be probably one of the top 20 law firms in Australia size wise by in 5 to 6 years time.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I mean, as you get bigger, as you say, it's like at 20, 25%, it's like pretty serious growth,
Yeah.
right? I like what you said earlier. It's like first year, you're like, woohoo, 1,000% growth off zero. All right, last question. If someone wants to disrupt and innovate the way of working in any industry, what's the one thing they need to do to make it happen?
I think the key is to listen to the customers. I think a lot of people trying to innovate in the legal space for sure. It's all about what's good for the lawyers, which is it's important. Don't get me wrong, but very few people are thinking about what do customers actually want. Great thing is you can find out very very easily by putting 5K into some AdWords, and you'll get to talk to some people and find out, okay, well, what are people actually interested in, what do people actually want. So to me, it's focus on what the customer wants, and you'll come up with something good.
Yeah, awesome. And then last question from me, not one of the make it happen in a minute ones, but what are you most looking forward to sort of throughout 2021 or in the short-term horizon?
Yeah, look, so it's going to be super interesting seeing with our client base, what happens with JobKeeper rolling off. I think that'll be interesting, concerning for some businesses. I don't think concerning for us, but it'll be it'll just economy wise what happens there. I think the other sort of thing for us is the continued growth of our membership subscription. Will that become by far the dominant kind of part of our business, or will it just be one of the limbs to our business? And look, beyond that, it's managing this, I guess, environment where most people are working from home most of the time. But because we're growing so quickly, we've continually got new team members joining. So how do we maintain culture in an environment where a lot of new team members have really not got to know their teammates, at least face to face, that much? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, that'll be another thing I'm kind of interested to kind of see how it goes and to work on. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So there's definitely a couple of things to sink your teeth into there for the next year or so. So, Lachlan, I just want to say thank you very much for being on the show today. I've really learned a lot. I've loved seeing how you've taken some of these growth principles and applied them to an industry where they haven't been applied before. And I'm really not surprised that you're seeing such great success. So again, thanks for being on the show and best of luck.
Thanks for having us, Tim. Cheers.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Make It Happen show. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And it doesn't need to end there. We've actually gone and grabbed a whole bunch of extra resources for you. Behind the scenes footage, videos from this and all the other episodes, as well as show notes that you can grab for free. Just head along to www.the-entourage.com/podcast and you can grab all those extra resources. Thanks for tuning in, and I cannot wait to introduce you to our next guest on the next episode.